I've got a really great interview coming up with a couple of storm chasers down in Arkansas. What they do is incredibly important, and we believe that these are the types of things that can make a difference, that can help people, that can educate people, but also indirectly, too, in supporting what it is they do. What they do helps other people. They're not making money off of this. If anything, it's costing them money. And as we'll explore in the interview, a lot of it is because we are failing our communities, because we're too caught up with this, that, or the other thing. So I'm really looking forward to sharing that. Sit back and enjoy this little take, and then we will be back with the Imminent Rueage storm chasing team, only on M.A.D Radio. Good evening, everybody. I have Ethan and Ashton from the Imminent Rueage storm chasing team here with us tonight. One of you folks say hi and tell everybody a little bit about what you do. Ethan, why don't you start off?
Hey, well, my name is Ethan. We are Imminent Rueage Storm Chasing, and we go out and we observe and we take footage of pretty much any type of severe weather. It could be hail, it could be tornadoes, could be hurricanes, and we can report whatever we see back to the National Weather Service so that they can kind of see what it's like on the ground, what they can't see on radar and things like that.
And I know Ashton is your sister, correct, Ashton?
Yes, that is correct.
So tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
My name's Ashton. Of course, I'm the other half of our two-man storm chasing team. And we've both been fascinated with storms and severe weather since we were really little. So this has kind of been our dream to go out and actually chase storms.
Now, I take it you folks live out in an area where, let's be blunt, there's a lot of severe weather. So you guys have been dancing with this, as you said, since you were little kids. What about it fascinated you to start off with?
So I've actually been interested in storms since before I can remember. Our parents were actually recently telling me about times that they had to drag me in the house from the porch when there were storms going on outside. And if they turned their back, I would just run right back outside. There was actually one time that there was an actual tornado on the ground across in a field across from our house, and our mom had to pull me back in the house. I don't know how many times, but they like to tell me that story. But yeah, I've been fascinated with storms and tornadoes as long as I can remember, and even a little bit before that.
And Ethan, where did it kick in for you?
Well, my sister babysat me a lot, and I think I got shown a lot of movies, and a couple of my favorite movies was like Fast and Furious and Twister. Had a lot of time watching, and I ended up just growing up and became an auto mechanic, and then eventually finally got to go storm chase, and it's just something I've always been interested in, nature in general.
So your sister's pretty much the one who dragged you literally into the storm, which, I mean, don't get me wrong, from a family dynamic, I mean, who better to have watch your back, because, you know, the nature of weather is that it's unpredictable and it can be quite violent. And obviously I've seen some of the footage that you guys have on YouTube. You guys, you know, you get in and close on these things.
Oh yeah, we get as close as we can safely get to the storms. There are a couple times that we've hung back probably a little bit further than what we could have, just because it is so unpredictable. And when you're looking at it on radar, it could be a mile up the road, it could be 5 miles up the road. The radars aren't that accurate, so we have to play it safe, but we do get as close as we can.
Now, both of you are, I guess, for lack of a better way to put this, you're professional storm chasers. You're both, you know, storm chasers at what's called the Skywarn Severe Weather Spotter. What's that about?
So I am part of a group. We're part of a group called Arkansas Skywarn. They're a group based out of Arkansas that's it's a combination of storm spotters and storm chasers. The storm spotters are individuals that watch the radar and monitor the weather and call in the reports to the National Weather Service. And of course, the chasers are actually out in the field chasing the storms, going to see what's actually out there. But we are both certified with the National Weather Service through their Skywarn program. And that's kind of how you get certified to be able to call in those reports to the National Weather Service.
So you're not like one of those groups that goes out and just does this for the reality TV aspect. That was the other thing I noticed, and really why I wanted you both on here. You guys are into the science. You obviously enjoy what you do. You have to be able to do it. But in the same instance, you recognize, I guess, the more adult elements that go with this. We were kind of joking before we started the interview, and I'm going to throw it out. I'm sure there's plenty of times when you deal with the weekend warriors who just, because they saw Twister drunk one night and they want to throw a bottle of Jack Daniels into a fucking tornado. And then you guys have to deal with the fact that, listen, we're trying to get scientific readings and deal with this here. Have you guys actually experienced that, at least within, the basic framework of that analogy?
We have a bit. When the storm is predicted early enough, what we'll run into basically traffic jams or just convoys of people. Most of the time, people following big name storm chasers like Reed Timmer. So they're just following, which does create a bit of a traffic jam. So we try to find out where the other chasers are going and then kind of plan our own route. So we don't run into those traffic jams where just everybody is going to be out there. We definitely never want to impede anybody trying to get through, like in the event that a tornado touches down. We never want to be in the way of the actual first responders trying to get through. So we try to be really considerate of that and not join in with those convoys and help create those traffic jams.
Yeah, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. So much of today is dominated by, the visual splash. And what you guys do really isn't, don't get me wrong, the storms are beautiful. They're amazing. But, there's an intent behind what you guys do. Why don't you tell folks a little bit about some of the science element of what you guys are compiling, the data for the early warning systems and things like that?
So the main thing that we're doing as far as the science aspect is there are certain areas where there are things called radar holes or radar gaps. And basically, it's just areas where the radars aren't reaching. The coverage is weak. They're not able to reach certain areas. And there's quite a few of those radar holes out there. So the National Weather Service does a really great job of issuing tornado warnings and getting those warnings out there as early as possible. But where the areas where the radar coverage isn't as great, or there are those radar holes, there are still instances where there are severe storms and tornadoes touching down without a warning being issued. So our main goal there is to be out there on the field. That way, if there's something that the radar is not picking up, we can see it in real time and call that back into the National Weather Service so that the appropriate warning can be issued.
So in all intents and purposes, you both are first responder relays, again, using the narrative to fill in the blanks where, technology is not covering. I'm going to go on a limb here, and I'm going to assume a lot of that probably is more rural areas, undeveloped areas that still have communities in them, but are not so connected into the grid, like you said, that, that there actually is, radar area keeping tabs on what's going on.
Yeah. I would pretty much agree with that. What happens a lot of time is there's only so many radar towers, and a lot of times, like, we have one in central Arkansas, and like bigger cities tend to have those radar towers, but sometimes when those cities are just so spread out, you have a certain radius of coverage, and sometimes just the places in between they just won't be able to see what's happening in their area.
Right. There's actually, I know that there's some holes in where the radar's reaching, and there's quite a few in Alabama. Here in southeast Arkansas, we have a pretty big issue with that. Northern Mississippi, there's quite a few areas in Missouri that have that issue where either there's not a radar tower close enough, or it's just the coverage isn't reaching far enough to cover the entire state.
So what are the tools that you guys use? Obviously, you mentioned radar, but if you're off the grid per se, again, I'm going to have to go out on a limb and assume that you guys are using some type of satellite technology to get your signal to whatever degree to at least get a bead on what's going, or do you actually have something that you run with to give you a little bit of more of that narrow zone, radar effect?
We do have a program that it uses a satellite, but that one's called GR Level 3. But the primary app we actually use is called Radar Omega, and we use that quite a bit. That is the most reliable radar system I have found, and it's actually available to the public. It is an app that you have to pay for, but it is probably the best radar I've come across. Now, the one I mentioned previously, the GR Level 3, that is software that you have to pay for or download. You have to get a license to use things like that, and the Radar Omega works just as well. So we do use Radar Omega a lot.
So again, from what you've described to me, you guys are going in a little bit shorthanded versus what a lot of other storm chasers or professionals would have at their disposal, because you're going into these radar dead zones. So,
Right.
you could be following a storm front that's, 60, 70 miles wide in a particular, front that's coming through. And in that area, there's really no way except to kind of look maybe at what's, 30, 40 miles somewhere else to even get a beat. So is a lot of what you guys do based off of being able to observe what's around you in real time? Not to say the analogy from Twister that, one of you smells the dirt and it's like, okay, it's coming from here, kind of stupidity. But I'm assuming that there has to be some levels, because I've talked to people and I've talked to people who live out there. I have friends who live in Arkansas. They said that there are certain elements, smell, there's a vibe, light, pressure changes and things, and they've lived out there all their lives, that you can use to at least give you some advance and give you at least a bit of a gauge on what you're doing when you're out there.
Yeah, I will say something that I went through during the Skywarn certification was they give you a lot of like real life imagery and videos and graphics that kind of let you know like a rear flank downdraft and what to look for, and like where would a rotation be in that, just based off of visuals. And they show you different types of structures and different types of way that trees move or damage or anything like that to what can warrant like severe weather in general. Whenever we're out there, we also sometimes lose cell signal and sometimes we have a mobile hotspot. Sometimes that goes down, and you just kind of have to gauge where you're at, what's looking severe. You got maybe the sky's getting green over in this area and could be more prone to hail in that area. So if you're out of cell or any type of data service, then you kind of have to go off of your visuals.
And actually, our very first storm chase, all we had were 2 phones and a laptop. And we were using the internet off of one of the cell phones for the radar on the laptop. So as soon as we got near the tornado, we lost all signal whatsoever. So all we had to rely on was visual. But I will say that there's a different barometric pressure drop really that you can feel. There's also there's a certain smell when a tornado is on the ground, when it's starting to do damage, because it's breaking apart wood. So there's a smell to it, and you can kind of feel it. So there are definitely ways to tell visually, and also just by the pressure and just using your other senses when you're kind of near to that area. There's been times that we're following what is showing up on the radar, but I'm seeing rotation that isn't necessarily where it said it was on the radar, and we will change course based on that if I do see something that isn't showing up on the radar.
Now, out here in upstate New York, we've had a record number of tornadoes just in the month of July alone. And, obviously there are things that are happening around us, without spinning into a debate about this or that. But there are particular elements that set the stage for these types of storms. Ethan, you had mentioned a dynamic of the sky looking green being more indicative of hail. Ashton, you mentioned, the smell. What are some other elements? Could you give folks kind of like that, severe storms for dummy routine about, what happens, what a superstorm, what creates it, and some of the other maybe things that, when folks are out and about, especially in areas where they're not really used to tornadoes, maybe would give them at least some semblance of a heads up that, all right, these are not the everyday thunderstorms that we have during the summer up here.
Right. So a tornado, by definition, what a tornado is a violently rotating column of air. But where you're going to see these are when you have severe thunderstorms, but the right conditions. So that's typically going to be when there's warm, moist, unstable air, and then a cold front coming directly behind it. So like if you don't know anything about weather, but you know that it is warm and muggy outside and the weatherman is telling you that there's about to be a huge temperature drop tomorrow, if you've got a storm already in place, those conditions could be just right to where a tornado would form. Those are kind of some of the things that I would look for.
Now, I know also, too, elements of things like shear and time of day. What is the most common element, if you can even put one, that you have found between, your average garden variety pop-up thunderstorms and when storms really become supercells?
Well, a lot of times we'll go out and look at like the GFS model data. It's a forecast simulated radar. And if you can kind of see an area of low pressure that's a cooler trough that's behind a higher pressure, warm environment, and it comes through, and you kind of just look in the middle. And so, like Ashton said, if you know that tomorrow's going to be cold, today's, it's warm and it's moist out here, and it's muggy, you just kind of have to prepare just in case. Where am I going? Let's see.
Well, and I think
it's easy to get lost in the storm. Let's just put it that way.
Right, and a lot of tornadoes happen at night, and I think that is because your temperature is changing so drastically after the sun goes down. So exactly like Ethan was saying, if you've got an area where the dew point is higher, but there's another area and they almost intersect where your dew point is a lot lower because of that temperature drop, then that's going to be a good area where you could kind of anticipate a possible tornado forming.
Now, in your experiences, obviously you live in an area that has the potential for more storms. I have friends that live in Oklahoma. Obviously, Tornado Alley got that nickname because it just kind of sits in that unique area where a lot of those aspects that you mentioned do tend to converge. The jet stream dips down in a particular way. The Gulf Stream comes up in a particular way. And then you get these convergences and, bang, you get a line of storms that go tornadic. But we're starting to see them now in different areas. Ohio has always been one of those places that's classically seen it, but we're seeing the shift now more east, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and then again, obviously, here in upstate New York, we had 23, confirmed tornadoes in the month of July, which is just, it's never happened up here before. Is there something that you guys are seeing down there in the elements? Is it just, Mother Nature doing her thing, or do you see anything else that maybe says, hey, this might be, part of a model for looking at this in the future?
See, and there's been quite a bit of talk about Tornado Alley actually shifting. They've been talking about changing where Tornado Alley is typically located, and it does appear to be shifted further east. I know not further east, but a region that I wasn't used to getting so many tornado warnings, Iowa has gotten an abnormal amount of tornadoes over the past 2 years. Now, I don't know why they're occurring in areas where they don't typically occur, but I have noticed that shift more east and a northernly shift as well.
That's interesting because, again, I've heard very similar things from other people. I also heard that, some of the elements they've noticed in some of the migratory shifts as well, too, guys that are hunters, a few friends who do botany and stuff like that. Have you noticed any of those elements as well, too, within the shift of patterns? Because obviously, if you have an area that doesn't get as much rain and you get these types of storms that are training, sometimes it leads to more flooding. Sometimes, and we joke about it up here in upstate New York, that we haven't been getting the kind of winters that we used to see. And, a lot of people are actually happy that we're not getting buried in snow. But if you go 50 miles west to Buffalo, they got more snow than they saw in the last 4 years. So is there anything that you guys are noticing down there in Arkansas and the surrounding areas?
I commented this last winter that it hasn't. The biggest snowstorm I remember was when I was 9 years old, and I do not remember it having a snowstorm like that since then, because we were building snowmen and igloos and everything else, and we barely get snow now. So our winters definitely aren't what they used to be, but our spring is definitely just as storm prone as it used to be.
So little things, but again, also indicative of what you've been seeing, at least, your time down there. We're going to take a break real quick. We're going to play a little bit of music and a little bit of promos, and then we'll be back. You're listening to Get Mad Radio. So welcome back. I have Ashton and Ethan from the Imminent Rueage storm chasing team. It's a lot to kind of get off your tongue initially, but I'm getting better with it. You guys have been doing this for a few, like we talked about. Is there anything that really stands out to you in your experiences, either one of you, be it good, bad, or indifferent, in these journeys and in these adventures to certain degrees that you guys have been doing now, besides, obviously what you put on the YouTube and stuff like that?
Well, definitely there's something to learn from every single storm chase that we go on. We've over time learned that electricity is definitely a commodity to keep all of our gadgets running while we're going.
Yeah, it's a bit of an understatement. We couldn't do what we're doing right now if it wasn't for electricity.
Yeah, so our last chase was my favorite chase. Actually, it was went on a 36-hour storm chase. We had gotten to the hotel at 6:30 in the morning, and of course, they kicked us out about noon. So we went and got breakfast, and we were just exhausted, but we were dead set on chasing that day. We ended up chasing in the Ozark Mountains in Missouri, just completely exhausted. And the minute we got eyes on the tornado, the exhaustion just completely went away. But the coolest thing to me was, we're in the mountains. Everybody's trying real hard to get a good visual on a tornado that's extremely hard to see because of the mountains and trees and everything else. So I was actually standing in Ethan's car, standing out of the sunroof, trying to get a good vantage point on this tornado. But while I'm doing this, I just so happen to look around, and there's just storm chasers everywhere. There's people standing on their trucks. There's people running across the freeway with their cameras. It was filled with just excitement and happiness in the midst of basically pure chaos. And I just had this moment of feeling so proud to be part of this big, crazy storm chasing family and this little community we've found. That kind of stood out to me, that most people, they go and take shelter, and then you have this big community or family where this is what we live for.
Now, I think we would all agree that there is at least an element of a double edge to this, because these storms, again, are incredibly dangerous. Ethan, would you say for, the person who's been thinking about it, they've watched Twister 100 times, they've always wanted to go do this, for somebody who really doesn't know what the hell they're doing, what would be your best advice, your best set of guidelines for somebody who just wants to experience it without, obviously getting in your way, or worse, becoming a casualty?
Well, first, I would say to anybody that just watches a movie for one night and thinks they want to do it, it's not that easy. It would just better off be safe and stay in your safe spot in the situation. But for anybody that really wants to get into it, I would suggest to do a lot of research on meteorology in general. Go do the training for the Skywarn certification and just learn as much as you can. Make sure you learn a lot about safety, and just do not go out there and just rush out just trying to get footage, and make sure you're also doing it for a good cause instead of just getting it for likes and views.
Now, well said, because it is unfortunately the nature of people, and Ashton, you described this very well. We tend to not always react correctly when we're in situations that require us to flee. It is the fight or flight mentality sometimes, but sometimes it is so compelling, not unlike a train wreck, you get caught in the collateral damage of a situation. Is there anything within a comedic element? Did you guys ever have something so ridiculously funny, again, using, any analogy that you remember? Because I think to some degrees, especially with nature, you never know what the hell you're going to run into. You know what I mean? And especially with these types of storms.
Yeah, there was one time, actually, we were in southeast Arkansas, about on the border of Mississippi. And we were watching this, the cell head towards us, and it had a little bit of broad rotation. So we sat and we let it come towards us and let it roll over us. And while it was raining really hard, the wind was going crazy, Ashton was trying to get the camera on the tripod, and the tripod kept flipping over because the wind is so crazy. And then it was just so chaotic there for a few minutes. It's just loud, and it's just definitely severe. And as soon as the rain went by, it cleared up, got sunny, blue skies, low clouds, and then we turn around and there's a double rainbow, and we just kept looking at it, taking pictures. We were amazed at it, because for me, it was the brightest, probably closest rainbow I've ever seen. And we were just sitting there looking at it, amazed at our entire area. And while we were doing that, Blaze from Skywarn, he's the guy that lets us know about warnings and kind of what direction we need to go sometimes. And we had him on in the car, and he was telling us that cell that just went over us was just now tornado warned. And we were a bit too busy looking at the rainbow, and then we finally realized what was going on, so we had to hurry up, get our equipment, and get back out on towards chasing it.
I mean, but that's great. I mean, that really does illustrate how quickly it can literally go to, rainbows and sunshine to, as Ashton said, absolute fucking chaos. You know
Exactly.
what I mean? And they are very, I guess you could say, they're unique in the element because they can go one way or another. They don't really follow a behavioral pattern per se. So when you're in those scenarios, and you said it yourself, you guys will usually hang back versus get closer because you recognize and respect the dynamic. How many storms would you say between the two of you guys have been involved in, be they tornadic or not?
Ooh, I don't even
A
know
lot.
how many that would be.
Yeah, it's been a lot now.
To count every individual storm, I don't even know that I could put a number on it at this point.
And it doesn't really, like, also sometimes they just come to us, like back in March 31st of last year, there was the was it an EF3
Yes.
that came through? EF3 came through 4 blocks from our house, and we were actually going to go chasing and towards Memphis that day, but things kind of shifted a little bit west a little bit earlier than we thought. And as soon as we both got home from work, there was already something basically right at our doorstep for us to come see.
I actually
and you have
ended
that
up
you have
filming
that footage
one.
on YouTube, I think, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that was one. I was gonna say that was one of the ones I remember seeing when I was looking at it. So yeah, I guess sometimes the storms come to you. You don't even have to chase them per se. And I really do appreciate sharing that information because I think again, I have a friend who does paranormal investigation. He says the same thing. It's okay to be interested, and we get that people think it's cool or whatever it is, but there's an underlying element. There's an underlying danger, and there needs to be a level of professionality to preserve, because you guys, again, aren't just going out there for shits and giggles. You're filling in the gaps in a warning system that could mean the difference, in somebody's life. It definitely will reflect on, businesses. My friend Glenn, he's a soybean farmer there in Arkansas. So, knowing what the hell's going on, if you're in the middle of a field and you're 20 minutes out from being able to get home, you know what I'm saying? It's just, that's the type of stuff, the real stuff that it affects families and communities. These storms don't care who you are. They don't care where you are. They are, again, as mentioned, chaotic by nature. Have you been able, again, I'm going to assume that you guys have actually been able to make a difference and give some early warning to some of these things, because you guys have had a lot of storms down there, like you said, over the past couple of years.
Yeah, we try to do as much as we can. And that was actually part of the reason we recently just set up a Facebook page. I wasn't going to set up a Facebook page because I'm not a big fan of the Facebook algorithms. I feel like Facebook decides when and who sees your post, and it's not really ideal when you're trying to get warnings out.
It's a pay-to-play system. Listen, this is the world we live in, and I'm going to segue this because one of the things I thought was really cool on your profile, Ashton, you had the Project Mayhem, and I am Jack smirking disdain when it comes to some of the bullshit that gets floated out there on all of us. And this is not about politics or religion or anything like that. It's just, follow the money type of analogy in how certain things, be it a Facebook or be it media or, in our case, we started this radio station because we just were tired of the commercial insanity. It's like 98% of the radio stations in this country are owned by 3 companies. And they all have the same approach, and they all want to play the same things, and they're all making, billions of dollars off of just basically serving us prepackaged shit. Some of it's good, don't get me wrong, but it is a narrative that unless you pay, you don't get to play. And that drives a lot, I think, some of the other side of it, where people are just going for shock value. They're going for the flash. They have to be more insane, more intense than the next person, because that's the only way people are going to come like them and, give them any sense of popularity. You guys are out there doing it because people die from storms, and especially when you talk about these more rural communities that don't have access to the same type of tech. They're not less important than, somebody, on, a high-end, computer system, or maybe has access to early warning things. I know we do up here, but I know some of those storms came in so fast that, the National Weather Service was just literally getting on it as they just started ripping through. I mean, they just popped up that fast and just became monsters really quickly.
Right, absolutely. And like Ethan was mentioning, the storm that came right by where we live, that one, it was warned, but I guess people just, there hasn't been a tornado in that particular area in a very long time. So I don't know if it was just a situation where people weren't taking the warning seriously, or if it, maybe they didn't have enough warning. But there were plenty of people that did not have an opportunity to take shelter. So I had actually left my job to come home because we had planned to go chase it. But my coworkers were reaching out to me saying, where is the tornado? Where is it tracking? Do we need to take cover? So I was in the middle of trying to get home and go on a chase, but also trying to update about 15 different people that were in the affected area to let them know where the tornado was and what path it was taking. So I did want to try to find a platform so I could reach more people all at once instead of having to send individual text messages to all of our friends and family.
I think that's a great idea because, again, we cannot ever really predict where, just that one person, that one element might make all the difference. You know what I mean? Again, and that is the nature, unfortunately, with these types of storms. Why don't you tell everybody a little bit more about the YouTube channel, the Facebook site, where they can go, what they can do to help support you and get the word out?
Well, we've got, we originally just started with YouTube. Just here and there, we're trying to get our live streaming just in better quality. We're changing out equipment every so often just to try to keep it going, because sometimes you lose mobile hotspot service and the stream goes down. So then we've had to resort to cell data and things and streaming on a phone and trying to stay active with the people in the chat on YouTube. We also, we did on Twitter. It's all the same name for everything, Imminent Rueage Storm Chasing. It's on YouTube, Twitter. We just started the Facebook, and we just started a TikTok as well, just to where we're going to post the same shorts that we put on YouTube on there. And we're also in the middle of trying to figure out a way to, you can use some type of a plug-in and we can live stream to YouTube and to multiple other platforms at the same time, so we can kind of get the coverage of where we're at on multiple platforms, because sometimes
you have programs like StreamYard, OBS. I use OBS to do some multiple platform stuff, and then obviously I have a different setup for broadcasting on iHeartRadio and all the Alexa devices and stuff like that. But yeah, there is tech out there, but it does take a little bit to coordinate it all. And obviously, you know what I mean, it is reflective. You guys, you don't get paid to do this per se. You have regular jobs like regular folk, and you do this outside of that too. You mentioned, Ethan, you're a mechanic.
Yeah. Well, I was a mechanic here recently. I've switched over to a different job, but still full-time jobs. And we just do this whenever we can, whenever we get the chance outside of work. And if it's, in a close enough area to where we can get to it and get the footage out there and get people seeing it in real time, because when people see it in real time and see the severity, they start to take it more serious than when they just hear the sirens, because not a lot of people take that very seriously.
No, it's a great point. How about you, Ashton? What do you do outside of this?
Well, outside of storm chasing, I actually work in a law firm, but they are very supportive of storm chasing. Anytime there's severe weather in the area, they let me leave early. They actually stream our YouTube channel every day in our break rooms, because everybody wants to come in there and see what's going on. But in addition to what Ethan was saying, I think the best platform to reach us on is YouTube, because we are beginning to do live streams, and it is really easy for us to get that information out to a large group of people with the live streams. And through YouTube, you can ask us questions through the chat that we can respond to in real time. So not only can you see the storm that we're actively chasing, but if you have questions about it, whether it's do I need to take shelter, or if you just have a storm chasing question in general, you can ask those while we're chasing, and we'll answer you right then and there. So I really think the live streaming feature of YouTube is our best platform right now.
No, listen, I mean, that is great. The thing I might also suggest, and outside of the joking Rick and Morty analogy, there are ways to create a direct type of communication app now. We have one for the radio station that you guys might be able to better get that information to people. We'll put you guys stuff up here, and we'll support it out as best we can. I got a buddy, like I said, out there, so we'll try and tap back in, because half the battle is knowing. If you don't know where something is, if you don't know that the tool is available to you, then it can't help you when you need it. And I think for a lot of us, it's better to have the information and not need it than to need it and not have it in a particular moment. So I really do respect what you guys do. Anybody else you guys like to shout out or you want to throw into the mix before I let you go?
Well, so I did want to give credit to one person. He's a good friend of ours. His name is Jared Franklin. When we were trying to come up with a storm chasing name, we were throwing around a lot of ideas, and he actually came up with the name Imminent Rueage. And the minute we heard it, we knew that was the one. So I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Jared. So thanks for helping us come up with that name.
So what are your goals now for the future? Where's this going to be in 5 years? Or let me ask you, do you guys have something in mind that you'd like to see happen with it?
I would say, because right now we still have full-time jobs and we have to basically do it around that schedule. Here in, the next 5 years, it would be a nice standpoint to be at, to where it would actually make us enough money to sustain chasing itself. And that way, that's something that we could do full time, and then just give full time coverage, always be chasing anywhere across the country, not just, within like a 6-state region around Arkansas. That's probably my biggest goal, is just being able to do it full time and always be there when we need to be there.
Well, especially due to your connections with the National Weather Service and some of that stuff. Your bet's probably going to be, and we did the exact same analogy for the radio station, forming under, a nonprofit doesn't mean you can't pay the expenses and the things that you need to make it work. So that way you don't have to dance in anybody else's framework, but it does allow you, and deservedly so, to be in the same mix as a lot of other, scientific organizations. That's why we have all this funding for these grants and, other things for these types of projects. But unfortunately, and Ashton, I'm sure you appreciate this from Project Mayhem, there's a lot of shit that you got to jump through. And the nonprofit framework really is, at least in my experience, and I've been doing this for a few years now, the only real way for some of the stuff that you're describing, because it's a pure scientific element. You know what I mean? It's not like you guys are creating a reality show, that's going to be, some, stupid Twitter feed type of thing. But you have some good ideas, and especially in the dynamic of filling in those radar holes for those communities. I think that that's really important stuff. So I would love to see you guys be able to do it. And like I said, those of us here at Get Mad Radio will support you guys in any way that we can. We'd love to have you come back. Don't get me wrong. I don't want crazy, super destructive storms to hurt people, but I know it's a double-edged sword for you guys, because that's what you do, is you chase these things. So, we kind of got to find that balance in Project Mayhem. And I got to tell you, my mind got blown, and I'm just trying to picture, the whole lawyer thing, Project Mayhem, storm chasing. It's an interesting combination to kind of, swirl it all together. And I think maybe to some degrees that probably gives you a unique advantage. The same analogy, having a basic mechanical understanding allows you to, in a context of analyzation, break things down and put them back together. So especially in the moment, I'm sure you're looking at storms, you're looking at those patterns and those elements, and you're breaking it down and then figuring out, all right, I'm going to put it back together here. This is where we need to be, or where we don't need to be, especially in that scenario.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really big part of it. And I will say it is very confusing to people when I tell them I work in a law firm, but I'm also a storm chaser. But I've worn many hats throughout my career. So I've worked at a dog grooming salon. I was a bartender for 6 years, and now, of course, I work at the law firm. But behind all of that has always been the storm chasing aspect because I've been passionate about it my entire life. But it is a very unique perspective to take little bits and pieces that I've learned from everything I've done throughout my life to apply it to the storm chasing world.
And it's definitely not something for the faint of heart. So, I mean, again, you both obviously have a commitment to it, and I applaud you for that. Listen, thank you again both for taking the time. I'd love to have you guys come back out sometime in 2025. I'm sure the spring will be busy for you, but we'll keep an eye on what's going on. And periodically, as you bring updates and stuff, we'll share them out and expand on it. Thank you again. Any final closing words or thoughts, Ethan? Anybody you want to shout out there?
I want to shout out Blaze Thomas. He works with Skywarn, and he's really, really helpful when it comes to being able to see things from, a radar person perspective, to where they can see it, so they can see what's ahead of us, what's, not necessarily in real time on the ground. And it tells us where to go and really assists us in a lot of ways, and a lot of other people as well, and all the other storm chasers. So I'd like to shout him out, and just thank you for having us on your radio show.
No, listen, I appreciate you both taking the time to come out. And again, really appreciate that you're out there, doing this kind of stuff. And as mentioned, a lot of people don't know. So part of what we want to do, making a difference through the power of radio, is bring some of these elements out. If anybody out there is listening, how can they get in contact with you if they want to sponsor your concept and throw you a whole bunch of fucking money to do what you do?
We've got on our YouTube channel, we're always active in the comment section. We've got our email on there. You can email us, stormchasing1@yahoo.com. We've got Facebook. We just set up our kind of business side of Facebook, so you can comment and chat or anything. We're always there and available to respond to you.
Don't try and friend request Action, because Action has it publicly posted that she only accepted from people she knows. So I got lucky. Somehow I was able to sneak through. But it was weird because a buddy of mine out there had put it out, and then I saw it, and I was like, it was really cool. I went and checked out. I liked it, and I was talking to a couple of the guys at the radio station, because we were getting all these insane, tornadoes and that. Actually, you remember I said, listen, we're getting hit with tornadoes over the place. I need somebody who actually understands it. And I'm kind of old school. I saw you guys. So I was like, you know what? Let's just reach out to them. And, you guys are on the front lines.
Right. And I'm glad you did reach out. And that was actually the other reason for the creation of the Facebook page, is because I was sharing all the severe weather updates from my personal page, which is only reaching so many people. But I'm also now with the storm chasing community, I'm getting a lot more friend requests than I typically would. So I figured if I went ahead and created an Imminent Rueage Facebook page, then everybody could contact us there. We respond to messages as fast as we can, usually within the hour. But this way we have a centralized platform where everybody can get on there and see what we're doing. And they can talk to us whenever they want.
Hey, listen, sometimes there's no coincidences. It made all the way up to upstate New York, and a wolf caught it and was like, ooh, what's this? This is cool. And that's what we try and do. Again, thank you both for joining us. You're listening to Dancing with Wolves. I am the Wolf, and we'll be back.